The new Republican team came roaring out of St. Paul this week, and for the Democrats' reaction, we were back on the trail with Barack Obama.
Good to be in the Midwest. Good to be just a few miles from my home state.
All fired up at the Wabash County Fairgrounds in Indiana on Saturday. Obama mocked the idea that John McCain means change.
Except for economic policies and tax policies and energy policies and health care policies and education policies and Karl Rove style of politics, except for all that, we're really going to bring change to Washington. What are these guys talking about?
After the speech, we talked about issue number one, the economy. Yesterday, that unemployment report came out. Here's what John McCain said. He said, my tax cuts will create jobs. His tax increases will eliminate them.
Yeah, John McCain has been peddling this story about me increasing taxes when every independent analyst has said my tax cuts provide 3 times the amount of tax relief to middle-class families than do John McCain's. I mean, what he wants to do is essentially to not only continue the Bush tax cuts to the very wealthiest Americans, but he wants to double down with $200 billion in additional tax cuts to corporate America, including companies like ExxonMobil. And what I've said is, let's provide tax cuts to 95% of the American people, because I have a different economic theory than George Bush's and John McCain's. I believe that the economy is going to grow from the bottom up, and if we give some relief to middle-class families, they're going to do better.
Actually, the Tax Policy Institute says it's 81% of the American people. It's 95% families with children. But they also say you raise revenue by $600 billion over the next 10 years. He cuts revenue by $600 billion over the next 10 years. If we're either in a recession or approaching one, is it wise to raise revenues in any way?
Well, I think that it is wise if you've got a $500 billion deficit. I think it makes sense for us to make sure that we're paying for what we're purchasing. If we're continuing to spend $10 billion a month in Iraq, we can't keep on borrowing that on a credit card from the Chinese. So, John McCain likes to talk about fiscal responsibility, but there is no doubt that his proposals blow a hole through the budget. And, what I've said is, realistically, we're not going to be able to eliminate that budget deficit. But what we can do is stabilize it, stop digging a hole, give a tax break to middle-class families, give them some relief, and that will start growing the economy again.
So even if we're in a recession next January, you come into office, you'll still go through with your tax increases?
No. What I've said, George, is that even if we're still in a recession, I'm going to go through with my tax cuts. That's my priority.
But not the increases?
I think we've got to take a look and see where the economy is. I mean, the economy is weak right now. The news with Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, I think, along with the unemployment numbers, indicates that we're fragile. I want to accelerate those tax cuts through a second stimulus package, get more money into the pockets of ordinary Americans, see if we can stabilize the housing market, and then we're going to have to reevaluate at the beginning of the year to see what kind of hole we're in.
I just got back from the Republican convention, and it's clear that the choice of Governor Palin electrified that convention. You said that your number one criteria for a vice presidential pick was someone who's capable of being president.
Right.
Did John McCain meet that threshold test?
Well, I'll let you ask John McCain when he's on ABC.
But I want to know what you think.
Or Governor Palin if she ends up accepting an invitation to your show. Here's what I'll say. I think she's a skilled politician. She wouldn't be governor of Alaska if she wasn't a skilled politician, and I think her performance at the convention showed what a skilled politician she is.
But what does it say about John McCain that he picked her? Your supporters.
Well, here's what I'll say is that it tells me that he chose somebody who may be even more aligned with George Bush or Dick Cheney or the politics we've seen over the last 8 years than John McCain himself is. I mean, supposedly he was thinking about taking Joe Lieberman, decided not to because the right wing of the Republican Party would have had a riot. The most important thing from my perspective is what are the policies that John McCain and his vice president intend to pursue? And what I didn't hear from Governor Palin, what I didn't hear from John McCain, what I didn't hear at all during this convention is how are they going to put people back to work? How are they going to deal with health care? How are they going to make college more affordable? How How are they going to keep people in their homes?
Senator McCain said that she actually has more national security experience than you. Here's what he told Charlie Gibson.
Alaska's right next to Russia. She understands that. She's the commander of the Alaska National Guard. He has no experience on these issues. She has been in charge, and she has had national security as one of her primary responsibilities.
Well, look, I actually knew that Russia was next to Alaska as well. I saw it on
It's
a map.
not a qualification?
I don't think it is.
But how about the National Guard executive experience?
Look, I know that John McCain was offended, or at least his campaign was, when she was asked, or one of his representatives was asked, what decisions did she make while she was heading up the National Guard? And they didn't have a response. But look, it's going to be your job.
No, but he's saying she has more national security experience than you do.
I understand, and I think that as somebody who served on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and passed legislation on critical issues like nuclear proliferation, as somebody who's been working on these issues for a long time, and somebody who selected Joe Biden as vice president, who's the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I'm going to be happy to have a substantive debate with John McCain about foreign policy. This whole resume contest that's been going back and forth is not what the American people are looking for.
It's pretty clear they didn't think too much of your early career as a community organizer. Governor Palin, Rudy Giuliani.
He worked as a community organizer. He immersed himself in Chicago machine politics.
What were you thinking when you heard the boos, the laughter? Yeah, it's a real puzzling thing. I mean, understand what I did as a community organizer. When I got out of college as a young person, 24, 25 years old, I moved to Chicago and worked with churches who were dealing with steel plants that had closed in their neighborhoods to set up job training programs for the unemployed and after-school programs for youth, and to try to deal with asbestos in homes of poor people. Community service work, which John McCain has been talking about putting country first and extolling the virtues of national service. That's what I did between the ages of 24 and 27 before I went to law school. I would think that's what we want all our young people to do. I would think that that's an area where Democrats and Republicans would agree. And so it's curious to me that they would mock that when I at least think that that's exactly what young people should be doing.
You're smiling about it, but some of your supporters were listening and they heard subtle racial code.
You know, I didn't hear that. I just think that there is a, for folks who suddenly have tried to grab the change banner, they've got a very traditional view of what service means. It means running for office and being a politician, I guess, or serving in the military. I mean, those are the two options that I think they've talked about. I think there are a whole lot of people, young people in particular, who are teaching in underserved schools or working in a hospital in need, volunteering for the community, that think that's part of the change that we need. That's part of the energy that we've been able to mobilize in this campaign.
You know, one of our viewers wrote in, you talk about service, and asked, Brenda Godfrey Bryant, Marietta, Georgia, did you ever consider joining the armed forces to protect and serve our country? If not, why?
You know, I actually did.
When?
I had to sign up for selective service when I graduated from high school, and I was growing up in Hawaii. And I have friends whose parents were in the military. There are a lot of Army military bases there. And I actually always thought of the military as an ennobling and honorable option. But keep in mind, I graduated in 1979. The Vietnam War had come to an end. We weren't engaged in an active military conflict at that point. And so it's not an option that I ever decided to pursue. But one of the things that I want to make sure of is that for those young men and women who decided to pursue a military career, that they are treated with the honor and dignity they deserve during service and when they get home. And this is actually an area where John McCain and I have had some disagreements in terms of funding veteran services and disability payments and dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, things that I've prioritized as part of the reason why I asked to join the Veterans Affairs Committee when I first went to the Senate.